I had just paid off my house as my brother's wife claimed it was now family property and tried to move in there with my two children. She said, "We're going to live here," and my family agreed. But then I said some words that made her cry. That day was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I remember looking at the printed confirmation of the last mortgage payment and couldn't believe it was finally happening. 6 years of saving money, working overtime, and giving up everything from vacations to new clothes. And there was the document in front of me. "Congratulations, Evelyn Harding. Your loan has been paid in full." I sat in the kitchen of my, now really my house, sipping inexpensive champagne straight from the bottle. It was about 4 in the afternoon, and I'd taken the day off to celebrate. I had planned to throw a small party next week, but today I wanted to savor the moment alone. After all, none of my family truly understood how much this house meant to me. My phone buzzed, a text came in from Daniel's brother. "Evie, we need to talk. It's urgent." I rolled my eyes. With Daniel, everything was always urgent. In 33 years, I'd gotten used to his dramatic nature. I sent him a quick, "What's up?" but there was no reply. I decided to ignore it. Today was my day. I even made a to-do list. Take a bubble bath, order my favorite pizza, watch a movie. A real treat for an introvert. The doorbell rang so suddenly that I flinched and spilled champagne on the countertop. Usually no one came to my door unannounced. I threw on a homemade cardigan over a t-shirt and shorts and headed for the door, tucking my disheveled brown hair into a messy bun on the way. Melanie, Daniel's wife, stood on the doorstep with my nephews, 6-year-old Oliver and 4-year-old Emma. I froze in surprise, especially when I noticed the two huge suitcases behind them. "Evelyn!" Melanie rushed over to me, hugging me as if we were best friends, though in reality, we only saw each other at family reunions. "It's so good to have you home." "Hi, Melanie." I hugged her back, still trying to figure out what was going on. "Hi, kids." Oliver mumbled something that sounded like a greeting without looking up from his tablet, and Emma waved shyly, snuggling against her mother's leg. "Come in." I stepped back, letting them inside, though I had a strange feeling of foreboding. Melanie's command was immediate. "Danny, get the suitcases." It was only then that I noticed my brother parking the car outside the house. "What's going on?" I finally asked, as Melanie headed for the kitchen as if she were at home. "Oh, didn't Daniel tell you?" She threw me a surprised look as she pulled an orange juice out of the refrigerator. "We're moving in with you for a while." I felt the blood rush from my face. "What?" "Evie!" Daniel came in the house, carrying suitcases. My older brother was always a head taller than me, with the dark hair and green eyes we'd both inherited from our mother. "I'm sorry for the unannounced call. I tried calling, but you weren't picking up. I only got one message from you 15 minutes ago." My voice sounded strained. "You can't just—" "We had to move out of our apartment right away," Melanie interrupted me, laying out the kids' jackets on my couch. "Do you know how hard rent is right now? And Danny's job cuts, loan payments, kids growing up." She sighed so dramatically, it made me want to roll my eyes. "I'm so sorry, but—" "And then we remembered that you had just paid off your mortgage." Melanie smiled big. "And we thought it was perfect. You're alone in a 3-bedroom house, and we're looking for a place to stay. Family property, after all." I froze. I could feel something boiling inside me. "Family property?" I asked quietly. Dash? Dash? "Yes!" Melanie waved her hand nonchalantly. "You bought it when you were single, so it's part of the Harding family property. And you always said it was a family home." "I never said that. This house was my dream, my own space after years of living in cramped apartments with roommates. I worked my ass off to put together the down payment and pay the mortgage." "Melanie," I tried to speak calmly, "I need to talk to Daniel, alone." My brother and I walked out into the backyard. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to keep from shaking. "What the hell is going on?" "Evie, we really don't have anywhere to go." Daniel ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd known since I was a kid. He always did that when he felt guilty. It's just for a couple months until we get back on our feet. You could have called and asked, instead of putting me on the spot. And what's all this family property crap? That's what Melanie says. You know her? He smiled awkwardly. She's got a funny way of putting it sometimes. She's claiming my house, which I bought on my own, with no help from anyone. Evie, you've always been so understanding. Daniel took me by the shoulders. We're desperate. Think of the children. I felt anger and guilt fighting inside me. All my life, I'd been the understanding Evie, who gave in to keep the peace in the family. But this house meant too much to me. You need to find another solution, I said firmly. I can help with the rent money, but… We've already given up on the apartment, Daniel interrupted. We literally have no roof over our heads. What? You moved out without even talking to me? That's when Emma came running out of the house. Daddy, Aunt Evie, Mommy says we're going to live in the pink room. She was bouncing around happily. I've wanted a pink room for so long. I froze. The pink room was my office where I sometimes worked from home. I painted the walls a soft pink because that color helped me focus. Emma, honey, come to Mommy. Daniel gently guided his daughter back into the house. When she was gone, he looked at me guiltily. Melanie is rushing things a little. A little? I felt my fingernails digging into my palms. Dan, this is unacceptable. You can't just… Evelyn, you can't just throw us out on the street. His voice got harsher. We're a family. A family helps each other. Those words, like a spell, always worked on me. I ran my hand over my face. Give me time to think, please. When I returned to the house, I found Melanie already unpacking in the guest bedroom. Evie, honey, do you mind if we move this dresser? It's taking up too much space. It was an antique dresser I bought at a flea market and restored with my own hands. Actually, I object. My voice sounded unexpectedly firm. Melanie, you can't just move in. We need to talk about this. What's there to talk about? She laughed. We're already here, and our parents fully support our decision. Parents? Of course. I called your mom this morning. She said it's a great idea and that you've always dreamed of having a big family in your house. I felt the room start to spin before my eyes. Grabbing my phone, I went out on the porch and dialed my mother's number. Mom, do you know that Daniel and Melanie came to my house with suitcases? Evelyn, honey. Mother's voice sounded happy. Yes, isn't it wonderful? Now your big house will be noisy and cheerful. Mom, they showed up unannounced the day I paid the mortgage, and Melanie claims it's family property. Well, technically, from a family values standpoint. No, Mom. Technically and legally, it's my house. I've been paying for it alone for 6 years. Evelyn, your mother sounded disappointed. Your brother's in trouble. They have 2 small children. Are you really that selfish? The word hit me like a slap in the face. Selfish! How many times had I heard it when I refused to give Daniel my pocket money, or when I didn't want to miss an important exam to watch him while my parents were away? Let's do this, Mom said. Dad and I will come over tomorrow night, and we'll discuss the situation over dinner. Okay? I agreed, feeling cornered. As I hung up the phone, I found Melanie standing in the doorway, watching me. Is everything okay? She asked with fake concern in her voice. My parents are coming tomorrow. We'll talk about everything. Great! She brightened up. I'll make my signature lasagna. By the way, Evie, do you mind if the kids watch cartoons in your bedroom? It's such a small TV in the living room. I silently walked past her into the house. My bedroom, my last private space, had already been invaded. Oliver and Emma were on my bed with their clipboards, scattering cookie crumbs across my white bedspread. The next 24 hours passed like a blur. Melanie acted like it was her house, shifting things around, bossing the kids around, and even me. Daniel spent most of the time tucked away on his phone, avoiding my gaze. I could feel something dark and heavy growing inside me. My parents arrived by 6 in the evening. My mom immediately rushed over to hug her grandchildren, and my dad patted Daniel on the shoulder, asking about work. I was barely honored with a nod. At dinner, when we were all sitting at my dining room table, Melanie talked about how wonderful it would be to live as a big, close-knit family. We could share expenses, she said as she piled more lasagna on Emma's plate. Of course, we're in a difficult financial situation for now, but we'll be sure to contribute later. How long do you plan to live here? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Well, it's hard to say. Melanie shrugged uncertainly. Maybe a year or two? The kids will be so used to school in this neighborhood. A year or two? I almost choked on my wine. We agreed on a couple months. Evelyn, Dad interjected, no one can predict how long it will take Daniel to find a new job. These are difficult times. But this is my house, I objected. I have the right to decide who lives in it and how long. You're so possessive, Evie. Melanie shook her head. Don't you realize that family is more important than material possessions? I felt something inside me snap. 6 years of austerity and deprivation. 6 years of denying myself everything from new clothes to dates. 6 years of working 2 jobs, coming home at midnight and getting up at 5 in the morning. Melanie, I looked her straight in the eye. You talk about family and support, but all I see is manipulation. You didn't even ask permission to move. You just put everyone on the spot. Evelyn! Mom threw me a warning look. No, Mom, let me finish. I turned back to Melanie. You always get what you want by using the children as a shield. Think about the kids, Evie. The kids need stability, Evie. Has anyone thought about what I need? I've worked 6 years to pay off this house. 6 years! And the day I finally became a full owner, you show up and declare it family property? Melanie turned pale, her lower lip quivering. I just wanted to... You wanted to solve your problems at my expense. I couldn't stop myself. I always do. Remember how you borrowed my designer dress for a friend's wedding and returned it with a huge stain? Or how you took my sapphire earrings, a gift from my grandmother, and lost one? You never apologized. You never even admitted you did anything wrong. Evelyn, stop it right now! Dad pounded his fist on the table. No, Dad, stop it. I've kept quiet my whole life so I wouldn't upset you. I've always deferred to Daniel because he's older, he's a man, he's harder. And it's easier for me? Easier to buy a house by myself? Easier to always be the one who gives in? Melanie suddenly cried, covering her face with her hands. The children clung to her fearfully. How can you be so cruel? Mom put her arm around Melanie's shoulders. The poor girl just wanted the best for her family. On me. I got up from the table. Always on me. You're selfish, Evelyn. Dad shook his head. That's not how we raised you. I looked at them, my family, who always thought of me as some sort of backup. Daniel avoided my gaze. My parents were comforting a sobbing Melanie, and the kids were staring at me with wide, frightened eyes. In that moment, I realized that I could no longer, and would no longer want to be the quiet, comfortable Evie who always gives in. After that family dinner, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch in the living room. My bedroom had to be ceded to Melanie and Daniel, and remembered how I'd always been the one to give in. My whole life had become an endless series of compromises, with me always the loser. Ever since I was a little girl, I was instilled with the idea that I had to be the understanding sister. Daniel was born 3 years ahead of me, and my parents always treated him like a little prince. He's a boy, Evie. He needs more attention. Daniel is the future head of the family. You need to support him. These phrases became so commonplace that I stopped noticing them. I remember when I was 8 and Daniel was 11, my parents bought us both a video game console. We were supposed to take turns playing, but every time it was my turn, something urgent happened. Daniel had friends over, or he needed to complete a level urgently, or it was just, today's a special day. When I complained to my parents, my mom just shook her head. Evelyn, don't be so selfish. Daniel is a boy. He cares more about these games. At school, I was always a quiet and diligent student. Good grades, good behavior, participation in Olympiads. But even here, I was outshined by Daniel and his athletic accomplishments. At parent-teacher conferences, teachers praised me for my grades. But my parents were more proud of my brother's medals. Studying is good, Evie, but look at Daniel playing soccer. Just like his father. After high school, I went to pharmacy college, not because I dreamed of a career in pharmacy, but because it was practical and reliable. Plus, the college was close to home, and I could help my mom with household chores. Daniel, of course, left to study in another city. A man needs independence. When I got a job at MedPharm, a large pharmaceutical company, my parents were not very enthusiastic about it. A stable job, but so boring, my mom said. No one noticed how I gradually moved up the career ladder, from a simple laboratory technician to a quality control specialist. 5 years ago, Daniel brought Melanie to a family dinner. She was spectacular. Blonde hair, bright makeup, fashionable clothes, and from the first moment I met her, I sensed something fake about her. Melanie hugged Mom like she'd known her all her life, admired Dad's barbecue, and kept touching Daniel's arm like she was afraid he'd disappear. "Evelyn is so sweet," she said then, even though we'd barely spoken a sentence or two. "I could tell you had a good heart." I smiled back, but something inside me felt wary. There was an undercurrent of condescension in her compliment. After dinner, as I was washing dishes, Melanie came over to help. She chatted on and on about nothing, and then suddenly she said, "How nice that Daniel has a sister like that. Always supportive, always helpful. I guess you never say no, do you?" "I try to help when I can," I said evasively. "I never had a sister," Melanie sighed. "Imagine, now I'll have a sister who'll always be there for me." She said, "I will ask, and you will give." But I didn't say anything, because I could see how happy Daniel was. 6 months later, they were married. At the wedding, Melanie asked me to be a bridesmaid, but gave me the most unfavorable dress, a pale yellow one that didn't match my skin color at all. It's a wedding tradition, Evie. The bridesmaids aren't supposed to outshine the main character of the day. By then, I'd already started saving for a house of my own. I lived in a tiny apartment with a roommate, saving on everything from coffee to clothes. When I told my parents about my dream, they just laughed. "Evelyn, honey, why do you have to go to such trouble?" Mom said. "You'd better save up for a wedding. You're already 28. It's time to think about a family." "Yes, my daughter," said my father. "A house is too much responsibility for a single woman." But I was determined. Every month, I saved almost half of my paycheck. I took extra shifts, worked weekends, refused to take a vacation. My coworkers were surprised by my zeal, but I knew I was doing it for my dream, a place that would be mine alone. One day, my mom called me in tears. Daniel was having money problems. He had invested in some bad project and lost a large sum of money. "Evie, honey, can you help your brother?" Mom asked. "It's just a few thousand, he'll pay it back." It was the money I was saving for a down payment on a house. But how could I say no? "Family comes first, Evelyn. You'll need help someday, too." Daniel, of course, never repaid the debt. "I'm sorry, Evie. It's such an expense with the kids right now." "You understand." I did understand. I always understood everyone. When I finally saved enough for a down payment and found the right house, no one in the family shared my joy. My mom worried that I was putting myself in debt. My dad thought the realtor had scammed me. And Daniel just shrugged. "If you want to mess around with repairs and leaky faucets, that's your business." Only my coworker and friend Sarah was genuinely supportive. "That's amazing, Evie," she said when I showed her pictures of the house. "It's so cozy and bright. You deserve it." Did I? Sometimes I doubted it. All those years of austerity and overtime, was it worth it? But the first time I stepped into my own home, not a rented apartment, not my parents' house, but my own, I realized that yes, it was. Melanie, of course, immediately began to hint that now Evie has a place to have family parties. The first housewarming party turned into a raucous party where I felt more like an attendant than a hostess. Melanie commanded where to put everything. Daniel and his friends set up a minibar in my kitchen, and my parents constantly criticized my choice of furniture and wall colors. The next day, I found wine stains on the new carpet, a broken cabinet door, and a mountain of unwashed dishes. When I called Melanie to gently express my dissatisfaction, she only laughed. "Oh, Evie, don't be such a drag." It was a great party. Besides, isn't that what houses are for? To bring loved ones together? I didn't invite my family over as often after that, but they still found reasons to come over. Mom needed to use my kitchen to make pies for a charity fair, or Daniel needed a place to hold a business meeting, or Melanie asked for permission to throw a baby shower because you have such a big yard, Evie. I was never good at saying no. The word stuck in my throat, replaced by the usual, "Sure, no problem." Even when my insides were screaming with injustice, I smiled and gave in. Good girl Evie. Evie's understanding sister. Evie's handy aunt. I kept catching myself thinking, next time I'll say no. Next time I'll stand up for myself. But the next time would come, and it would happen again. When Melanie borrowed my designer dress that I'd bought myself as a rare gift after a promotion and returned it with a huge red wine stain, I just sighed and said it was no big deal. When Daniel called at 2 in the morning, asking me to pick him up from the bar because he'd gotten into a fight with Melanie and had too much to drink, I got up, got dressed, and went to pick him up, even though I had an important report due the next day. When my parents insisted I take a vacation and watch their house while they went on a cruise, I canceled a long-planned trip with girlfriends and spent 2 weeks watering my mother's flowers and walking my father's dog. Year after year, concession after concession, I lost myself, becoming more and more comfortable for everyone but myself. And only home remained my refuge, a place where I could be myself, at least sometimes, when no one else was around. And now they were trying to take that away from me too. The morning after family dinner greeted me with the sound of a drill. I jumped up on the couch, disoriented and sleepy. The clock read 8 in the morning, Sunday, my only full day off. Throwing on a robe, I looked out into the hallway. Daniel was standing on a stepladder, drilling a hole over the doorway to the guest bedroom. "What's going on?" My voice sounded hoarse after a sleepless night. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Melanie answered cheerfully, coming out of the kitchen with a cup of coffee. "We've decided to put up a shelf for children's books. Don't worry, we're being careful. But you didn't ask permission." I tried to speak calmly, though I was seething inside. "Oh, Evie," Melanie waved me away. "We're living here now. We have to settle in." "You don't live here." I raised my voice. "We didn't agree to this." Daniel stepped down from the stepladder and looked at me with annoyance. "Evie, we talked about this yesterday. We have nowhere to go." "No, we didn't discuss anything. You just gave me the facts." At that moment, Oliver and Emma came running out of the kitchen with cereal in their hands. "Is Aunt Evie mad?" Emma asked loudly. "No, honey." Melanie stroked her daughter's head, giving me a glare. "Aunt Evie just didn't get enough sleep. Go finish your breakfast." When the kids left, Melanie lowered her voice. "Don't make a scene in front of the children, Evelyn. It's hard enough on them as it is. They're just getting used to their new home." "It's not their new home," I said through gritted teeth. "It's my house, and I didn't authorize you to live here or change anything." "Jesus, Evie." Daniel shook his head. "Have you always been so selfish? We're talking about your own brother, your nephews, your family." I turned around and went into the bathroom, locking the door. I needed space to think. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, disheveled hair, dark circles under my eyes, I made a decision. No more being comfortable for everyone but myself. On Monday, I took the day off work and made an appointment to see a lawyer. Lawrence Freeman, a full-bodied man in his 50s, with a friendly smile, listened carefully to my story. "Ms. Harding, the situation is very clear," he said after reviewing the documents. "The house belongs exclusively to you. You are the sole owner, and all payments have been made from your account. There's no legal basis to consider it family property." "What if they refuse to move out?" "Then we'll serve a formal eviction notice. They'll have 30 days to vacate the premises. If they don't comply, we can go to court." I nodded, feeling both relieved and heavy at the same time, evicting my own brother and his family. But there was no other way out. When I got home, I found that Melanie had rearranged the living room furniture and hung her family photos on the wall, taking down my paintings. Melanie! My voice sounded firm. I talked to a lawyer today. This house belongs to me alone, and I'm asking you to find another place to live within a month. She laughed as if I were joking. Evie, you're so funny. We're not going anywhere? This is our home now. No, it's my home, and if you don't move out voluntarily, I'll be forced to serve a formal eviction notice. Her face changed, her smile disappeared. You wouldn't dare. We're family. I dare. I was surprised at my own determination. You have 30 days. Daniel called that evening. He was yelling so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. You want to throw your nephews out on the street? What kind of monster are you, Evelyn? I'm not throwing anyone out on the street. I'm giving you a month to find a place to live. Where are we going to go? Have you thought about that? Daniel, this is not my problem. You're adults. You have jobs, savings. Find an apartment like normal people. The kids loved you so much. His voice got quieter, accusing. And now you know what Oliver says? Aunt Evie doesn't love us enough to throw us out on the street. Is that what you wanted? I felt a lump come up in my throat. The kids! It's not their fault. Don't you dare use the kids to manipulate me, I said, holding back tears. It's low, even for you. The next day, my mom called. She didn't yell like Daniel, but her quiet disappointment hurt just as much. Evelyn, your father and I are very upset with your behavior. How could you do this to your own brother? Mom, I offered to help them with rent money, but they won't live in my house. If you kick them out, you can forget about us. Her voice trembled. Father and we will disown you, Evelyn. You will no longer be our daughter. I couldn't find anything to say. All my life, I'd been afraid of this, of losing my parents' approval, of being excluded from my family. But now that the threat was real, I felt strangely relieved. It was as if the heavy chains I'd been chained to their expectations had begun to loosen. I tried to concentrate at work, but my thoughts kept returning to the family conflict. On my lunch break, I went down to the cafeteria, hoping for a quiet coffee. But the phone rang again. Melanie's name popped up on the screen. What do you need? I asked tiredly. Evie, I just wanted to tell you that we're very hurt by your behavior. Your parents are in tears. Daniel is having a hard time. You're destroying this family with your selfishness. Before I knew it, I was clutching the coffee cup so hard that the lid flew off and the hot liquid splashed onto my hand. Dash shit, I cried out in pain. Are you all right? A voice came from beside me. I looked up. There was a young man in a white lab coat standing in front of me, probably one of the new employees in the research department. Yay, it's just... I didn't finish my sentence, because Melanie kept saying something into the phone. Look, I interrupted her. I can't talk right now, I'm at work. Of course your precious job is more important than your family. Her voice oozed venom. You've always been an insensitive careerist. I clicked off and struggled to hold back my tears. Sorry about that, I said to the stranger, who was still standing beside me, with a concerned expression on his face. That's okay. He held out a tissue to me. I'm Marcus, the new biochemistry specialist. Evelyn, quality control. I tried to smile, wiping up the spilled coffee. Family problems? He asked, taking a seat across from me. I didn't usually discuss my personal life with my coworkers, but there was something about his friendly gaze that made me want to be frank. Yes, my brother and his wife decided they could just move into my house without asking and live there. I was surprised at my bluntness. Marcus nodded understandingly. And now they're accusing you of being selfish because you don't want them to? How do you know? I looked at him in surprise. I recognize the pattern, he smiled sadly. I grew up in a family that mastered the art of manipulation. If you love us, you'll do this. Only selfish people think of themselves. Family comes first. Classic techniques. I felt my shoulders relax. For the first time, Someone wasn't telling me that I should put my family first. They even threatened to disown me if I don't let them stay, I admitted. That's what's called emotional blackmail. Marcus shook his head. They use your affection for them as a weapon. You know what I've learned over time? A real family doesn't make you choose between your well-being and their wishes. His words hit the mark. All my life I had chosen the welfare of others, putting my own needs last. In the days that followed, the situation at home only worsened. Melanie and Daniel pretended not to hear about my ultimatum. In fact, they were getting more and more involved in the house. They brought more stuff, changed the curtains in the living room, even rearranged my appliances in the kitchen. The kids had already fully settled in and were running around the house as if it were their own. At work, Marcus became my outlet. We often had lunch together, and I would tell him about my family's new antics. He never judged, but let me see the situation from the outside. They use your feelings of guilt and responsibility, he said. It's like a drug for manipulators. Find someone who is always inferior and exploit that. But what am I supposed to do? I asked. I can't just throw them out on the street. Why not? He looked me straight in the eye. They're adults who have decided they can use you. They're not helpless, and they clearly don't care about your feelings. These conversations were slowly changing my perception. Marcus didn't give me advice, but his questions made me think about things I had previously taken for granted. 2 weeks after this nightmare began, I came home from work and found brightly colored invitations in my mailbox. The glossy paper read, "Welcome to Oliver's birthday party. 7 years is a big date. We look forward to seeing you at the Harding House at," followed by my address. The date was set for this coming Saturday. I flew into the house, clutching the invitation in my hand. "What is this?" I asked, finding Melanie in the kitchen, where she was putting away groceries. "Oh, have you seen it yet? It turned out nice, didn't it?" She smiled. "I ordered 20 pieces, but we can print more if we need to." "Melanie," I tried to speak calmly, "you're throwing a birthday party at my house without even asking me?" "Well, we live here," she shrugged. "And then, you have such a beautiful yard, perfect for a children's party. How many people did you invite?" "Not many." She turned back to the refrigerator. "Oliver's class, a few of our friends, your parents, my parents, a couple of Daniel's coworkers, about 30 people, no more." I felt my insides boil. "Cancel it!" My voice sounded unexpectedly firm. "Immediately." "What?" Melanie finally turned to me. "Don't be ridiculous. It's already organized. I've ordered a cake, animators, a trampoline for the kids. I don't care what you've ordered. This is my house, and I didn't authorize the party." "God, Evelyn," she sighed theatrically. "Don't be so petty. It's a child's birthday. Your nephew. Who you're using to manipulate me." I threw the invitation on the table. "Cancel the party or have it somewhere else. He won't be here." Melanie stared at me in amazement, as if seeing me for the first time. "You're seriously willing to ruin a 7-year-old's birthday party?" Her voice shook. "What's wrong with you, Evie? You've gotten so callous." "Nothing has happened to me," I said, heading for the kitchen. "I just won't let myself be used anymore. You have 2 weeks left to find a new place to live, and there will be no celebrations at my house." As I walked up the stairs, I heard Melanie calling Daniel. "Danny, it's a disaster. Evelyn has lost her mind. She's forbidding us from celebrating Oliver's birthday." "Yeah, can you believe it? We have to do something, or our baby will be inconsolable." I closed my bedroom door, which I'd finally regained, sending Daniel and Melanie into the guest room. Marcus's words rang in my head. "They're using your guilt as a weapon." But this time, I wasn't going to give up. I never thought I'd be starting my life over at 33, but that's exactly how I felt sitting in the cozy office of therapist Diane Meyer. Marcus had recommended her to me after that unfortunate day when I discovered the invitations to Oliver's birthday party. "Evelyn," Diane said, adjusting her thin-rimmed glasses, "what you're describing is called blurred personal boundaries. You've allowed others to violate your space for so long that they think it's the norm." I nodded, crumpling my napkin in my hands. For the first 2 sessions, All I did was cry, spewing out years of repressed resentment and anger. How do I change this? I asked. They don't listen to me. They act like my words mean nothing. Because that's the way it used to be, Diana said softly. You'd say no, but you'd always give in the end. They learned to ignore your words and wait for you to give in. She was right. Every time I tried to insist, the family just waited out my crankiness, knowing that eventually, good girl Evie would fall back into her usual role. You need to do more than just say no, Diane continued. You need to back it up with action. What concrete steps can you take to protect your space? I thought about it. The month I'd given Daniel and Melanie for eviction was coming to an end, and they'd done nothing to find a new place to live. On the contrary, more of their stuff was showing up in my house every day. I could change the locks, I suggested, surprised at my own audacity. Diana nodded. It's a drastic step, but sometimes it's exactly what you need to do. The key is to be prepared for the consequences. That afternoon after work, I shared my plans with Marcus and Sarah over lunch at a cafe near the office. Sarah, my colleague from the marketing department, has become a real friend to me in recent weeks. She, like Marcus, had been supportive of my efforts to assert my boundaries. I'm in, Sarah said firmly, pushing her red bangs back from her forehead. They've already proven they don't take words seriously. It's time to show them you mean business. I agree, Marcus nodded. But be prepared for them to try to force pity, especially using children. I sighed, imagining Melanie and Daniel's reaction. They'll definitely make a scene, call their parents, accuse me of all sins. I'm afraid I can't take it, I admitted. That I'd give up again. We'll be here for you. Sarah squeezed my hand. If you need to, you can stay with me for a few days until the storm passes. And remember, Marcus added, you're not doing anything wrong. You're protecting yourself and your space. That's okay. Their support gave me strength. The next weekend was to be a turning point. Melanie announced that she and the kids were going to her parents' house for 2 days. Daniel was staying in town, but planned to spend Saturday with friends at a soccer game. This was my chance. On Saturday, barely after Daniel left the house, I called the locksmith I'd found ahead of time. By noon, all the locks had been changed. I also put a new code on the alarm system and alerted the security company of possible problems. I expected a storm Sunday night when Melanie was due back with the kids, but the storm hit early. Daniel called me Saturday night around 9 p.m. What the hell, Evelyn? He was furious. I can't get in the house. I changed the locks. My voice shook, but I tried to speak firmly. The deadline I gave you has expired. You've made no attempt to find a new place to live. Are you crazy? Where am I going to sleep? You have friends, parents, even money for a hotel. I'm sure you'll manage. It's illegal. He was almost shouting. You have no right to kick us out of our house. This is my home, Daniel, legally and factually, and I have every right to decide who lives in it. He launched into a torrent of curses, then threatened, I'll call the police. This is a forced eviction. Do what you want, I said and hung up. An hour later, there was indeed a police car outside my house. I opened the door to 2 officers, who explained that they had received a complaint of unlawful eviction. I own this house. I showed them the documents I had thoughtfully prepared. These people are not tenants, do not pay rent, and were here without an official agreement. I asked them to move out a month ago, and they refused. The police officers looked at the documents and nodded. It's all right, ma'am. You have the right to dispose of your property. If they have things in the house, they can arrange a time with you to pick them up. When the police left, I saw Daniel standing on the sidewalk with an expression of shock on his face. He hadn't expected the law to be on my side. The real hell began on Sunday. Melanie, upon returning with the kids and finding she couldn't get into the house, threw a real tantrum all the way down the street. She screamed that I was a monster for throwing the kids out on the street, that I was destroying the family. Oliver and Emma were crying, not knowing what was going on. Please, at least let the kids in, Melanie begged. No, I tried to speak calmly, though my insides clenched at the sight of my nephews crying. You are their parents, and you are responsible for their well-being. Not me, An hour later, my parents arrived. My mom was crying, my dad angrily demanding that I come to my senses. "You're not our daughter if you're doing this," he shouted. "No Harding would throw the family out on the street." Their words hurt, but I remembered Diane's advice. When they realize that the old methods of pressure no longer work, they will step up the pressure. Be prepared for that. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I told my parents. "But it's my decision, and I won't change it." In the days that followed, they organized a real siege. They called constantly, came to the house, even tried to influence me through people I knew. Daniel threatened to sue for psychological trauma to the children. Melanie spread rumors about my mental instability. Every night I cried with exhaustion and guilt. Marcus and Sarah took turns coming to me, supporting me, reminding me why I was doing all this. Without them, I couldn't have made it through. About 3 weeks after the eviction, I happened to meet Christina, the wife of Daniel's coworker. We weren't close, but we were always friendly at company events. "Evelyn!" she called out to me at the supermarket. "Long time no see. How are you?" "I've been better," I answered honestly. "Yeah, I heard about your situation." She shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. "Look, I probably shouldn't say this, but I think you should know. Daniel and Melanie had been planning to move in with you long before they supposedly lost their place." I froze. "What do you mean?" "A few months ago, at a barbecue at our place, Melanie was telling me that she and Daniel had decided to save on housing. That your house was perfect, nice neighborhood, close to the school. She said you were always accommodating and couldn't say no to them." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What about their financial problems?" Christina shook her head. "They have savings. A lot of money." Daniel had told my husband himself that they were saving for a house in the country. Living at your place was a way to save money on rent, so they could save for more important things faster. I stood stunned by this information. All this time, they had been deliberately manipulating me, using my affection for my nephews, my tendency to give in, my sense of family duty. "Thank you for telling me," I finally said. "You're welcome." Christine squeezed my hand. "I think you did the right thing. And, a lot of people do." I couldn't sleep that night, thinking about what Christina had said. They didn't just take advantage of the situation, they planned it in advance. Coldly, calculatingly, knowing how much I loved my nephews and how I tried to keep peace in the family. I woke up this morning with an unexpected lightness. The guilt that had haunted me all those weeks was gone. In its place was clarity. I wasn't a selfish, family-destroying person. I was a person who had finally learned to say no to those who had taken advantage of my kindness for years. It was a turning point. I finally saw the true nature of our relationship: toxic, based on manipulation and use. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty for protecting myself. 6 months flew by like a day. Life was slowly getting better, although the road to recovery was not an easy one. For the first 2 months after Daniel and Melanie's eviction, I had little contact with my family. My parents carried out their threat to disown me. They didn't call or respond to my infrequent texts. It was painful, but with Diane's help, I was learning to accept that pain without letting it destroy my newfound boundaries. Most of all, I missed my nephews. Oliver and Emma were not to blame for their parents' actions, and the thought of them thinking I was the evil aunt who threw them out on the street was unbearable. In one of the sessions, I shared this with Diane. "You can build a relationship with your children without returning to a toxic relationship with their parents," she said. "Try suggesting a meeting on neutral ground." Gathering all my courage, I called Daniel. "What do you want?" His voice sounded cold, but at least he answered the phone. "I wanted to see Oliver and Emma," I said. "Maybe take them to the park or a movie." "What makes you think I'm going to let you see them after everything you've done?" "Because they're my nephews, and I love them. What happened between us shouldn't reflect on them." There was a pause. Then Daniel hummed, "Melanie will object. I'm not asking her permission. I'm asking for yours." One day, Dan. No parents, just me and the kids. To my surprise, he agreed. Later, I learned from Christina that Daniel and Melanie had split up. She'd found someone more promising, and her plans for a country house at someone else's expense hadn't materialized. Our first meeting with Oliver and Emma was awkward. We walked in the park and ate ice cream, but the kids were withdrawn, especially Oliver. "Mom says you don't love us," he said suddenly, looking at the ground. "That's not true." I sat down in front of him. "I love you guys very much. But sometimes even people who love each other can't live together." "How are Mom and Dad now?" Emma asked, and I realized that their parents' divorce had been hard on them. "Yeah, kind of." I hugged them both. "But it doesn't mean that love disappears. It just changes." It got easier after that meeting. I started inviting them over for a weekend once a month. We cooked pizza, watched cartoons, played board games. Gradually, the mistrust faded, especially after Oliver accidentally heard from his father that the eviction story was part of Melanie's plan. "Dad said you wanted to live with me for free so you could save up for a bigger house," he said one day while we were doing our math homework. "Was that true?" "Your dad and mom made their own adult decisions," I answered cautiously. "Sometimes adults make mistakes." "I'm glad we're friends again," he said simply, and my heart ached. Things were more complicated with my parents. Mom called first, after 3 months of silence. "Evelyn?" Her voice sounded unsure. "How are you?" "I'm fine, Mom." I didn't know what else to say. "Your father and we miss you," she said quietly. And we were wrong. It turned out that Daniel and Melanie's divorce had revealed a lot of unpleasant truths. Melanie hadn't just manipulated me. She'd been scamming my parents for years, too, siphoning off money for non-existent problems, making them feel guilty for not helping enough. "We didn't know," my mom said the first time we met. "She was always so nice, so concerned about us." I didn't say, "I told you so." Instead, I just hugged her. "I know, Mom. She was manipulative." Father had a harder time admitting he was wrong, but even he gradually thawed, especially when he saw how happy the kids were spending time with me. As for my personal life, my friendship with Marcus really grew into something more. We started dating about 4 months after all these events. I was cautious, afraid of losing myself in a relationship again, but Marcus understood my fears. "A healthy relationship doesn't require you to sacrifice yourself," he said. "It should complement you, not drain you." We moved slowly. He took his time, respecting my boundaries. When I was nervous or withdrawn, Marcus gave me space but stayed close. For the first time in my life, I was with someone I didn't have to give all of myself to earn his love. On the anniversary of my mortgage payment, exactly 1 year to the day, Melanie showed up on my doorstep with suitcases. I decided to throw a small party. But not a regular celebration, but a symbolic act, turning my house into a real fortress where I feel safe and can be myself. The guests were few: Marcus, Sarah, and her husband, a few other colleagues who had become friends, my parents, Aunt Martha, the only relative who had supported me from the beginning, and of course, Oliver and Emma. The house was decorated with flowers and garlands. There were appetizers on the table that Marcus and I had prepared. Sarah had brought a huge cake that said, "My Fortress." It was simple, but sincere. "I want to make a toast," I said as the guests gathered in the living room. "Over the past year, I've realized a lot about myself and what's really important. This house is more than just walls and a roof. It's a space where I can be myself, where my boundaries are respected, and where I make decisions." I looked at Oliver and Emma, who were listening with interest. "And it's a place where I'm always happy to see the people I love." I winked at them. "Especially if they call ahead and let me know they're coming." Everyone laughed, and the tension that still sometimes arose in the presence of my parents finally melted away. Later, when the guests had dispersed to their groups, my mom approached me in the kitchen. "You've changed, Evie," she said, as she helped me arrange the desserts. "You've gotten stronger." "I've just learned to set boundaries," I replied. It's a shame it took that lesson for your father and I to realize how unfair we were to you, she sighed. We always thought family was about sacrificing for each other, but you showed us that true love doesn't require sacrifice. I hugged her, feeling the old wounds heal. That evening, after everyone had left, Marcus and I sat in the backyard, looking at the stars. He held my hand, and his presence was warm and reliable. You know, he said, when I first saw you in the cafeteria, you looked so lost, and today, you're radiant. I feel like a different person, I admitted. It's like I've been looking at the world through distorted glass my whole life, and now I finally see it clearly. What do you see? I've been thinking that loving your family doesn't mean you can't be a part of it, that you can take care of others without losing yourself, and that sometimes you have to let go of toxic connections in order to keep healthy ones. Marcus nodded, squeezing my hand understandingly. You know what else I realized? I continued. Home isn't just a place where you live. It's a place where you can be yourself without fear of judgment or manipulation. A place where your boundaries are respected. Your fortress. He smiled. Yes. I looked at my house, quiet and cozy in the evening twilight. My home is my fortress, and I won't let anyone else destroy its walls. In that moment, I truly felt that I had finally found not only a home, but also myself. And that was the most precious thing of all.
Любі глядачі, дякую вам за перегляд, ставте лайки та підписуйтесь на канал. Також напишіть в коментарях, чи погоджуєтесь ви з Дженніфер, чи вона мала розказати все матері, чи ні, чи мала все розказати своєму коханцю щодо свого чоловіка, чи ні. І також прокоментуйте, чи вам сподобалось це відео.